Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Questions, Small Steps. My name's Amanda and I'm glad you could join me today. So last time we got together, we were talking about the biggest question that I've been struggling with lately in my life. And that was basically Christianity and do I fit into that or not? As a recap, I grew up in the Christian tradition, had a wonderful mom and dad, a wonderful family. I was part of the United Church of Christ, and I was raised in a church, went to Sunday school, helped with Sunday school. I remember from a young age helping my family do everything, from setting up classrooms to collecting offering. I remember leading Vacation Bible School in addition to attending Vacation Bible School, but always struggling with those questions that I had. And so long story short, even throughout all those different questions, I had, through experiences, my apologies, I had questions. I had questions about, was Jesus real? I had questions about, why are there so many different kinds of Bibles? And why are there different books in the different Bibles? And a big question I had was, why in services are we always praying and talking about Jesus? Why don't we just focus on God? God seemed to be an afterthought, and that really bothered me. So at the end of my last video, I shared that I was teaching confirmation class, and I came to this realization that this was not for me. I needed to step away. And that was hard. And that was scary. But that's what I needed to do. So, picking up on that story, I had talked to my wonderful boyfriend about my experiences and my questions and told him about my experience during that class with that sudden realization. And he supported me. He supported me just as always in figuring out what I needed. As you recall, or you may not recall, he is from a different background. He's actually Jewish. And he just encouraged me to think back to all those different church or experiences, worship experiences that I had while I was teaching Faith in Action, and really dive more into that. Asking me to reflect and really think about, well, where did I feel the most at peace? Where did I feel at home? Where felt right to me? And I kept coming back to the Jewish synagogue visits. Those were the ones that I was excited for every year. We went to different synagogues, and those are the ones I felt most intrigued about. Those are the ones that, even though I didn't understand the language, I thoroughly enjoyed the services. So, with some prompting, and quite a lot of prompting, quite honestly, because I'm a little bit resistant to change sometimes and a little bit anxious and overthinker, he encouraged me to reach out to the one synagogue within 30 miles of where I live and just see about going for a visit, attending services by myself. He's very supportive and was absolutely willing to go with me, but he stressed that this was something he felt was important for me to do by myself because it needed to be something that I chose for myself. What I believe, what my thoughts are, had to come from me. Had to. He couldn't do it for me. He didn't want me to enjoy something just because he was there. So I reached out to the synagogue online, and they messaged me back shortly thereafter, and of course, come on in. Our service is at this time, and I'll plan to meet you at the door, and this, that, and the other thing. And then I went on Google, of course, and I started to research because I want to know all the things about all the things. So researching, what am I supposed to wear? What should I expect? What am I supposed to say something? Am I supposed to bring something? All those different things. So I was as prepared as possible to go to the synagogue. And I remember vividly pulling up my first Saturday morning for a service, and I was shaking. I was nervous, and I was thinking in my head, what if they don't like me? What if what if I don't feel the same way? What if I'm completely lost? What if they just look at me and reject me? Like all these negative thoughts in my head, right? So I go, and the first thing that strikes me is the door was locked, but quickly opened by a man carrying a gun. And me in my small Midwestern town style, I was like, oh, this is different. Like, why do we need to have a security officer at the door? I went to church for 40 years and we never had that. So it was different for me. That was different. But come to find out, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the world, and a lot of people who react very strongly if you have different beliefs, or you look different, or you act different than they do, and they feel the need to hurt or harm others. And that's a way for the people of the synagogue to stay safe and feel that they can worship freely, is to have a security officer there, rightfully so. So he let me in, and he was very kind. And then I met the synagogue's president, and he was very warm and welcoming, showing me around. And then I met another gentleman. He was in charge of the building and grounds, he said. So basically, like all the little things. He made sure the grass was mowed. He made sure the windows were cleaned. He made sure the heating worked. All the things that make a building more welcoming for people. He made sure I had the correct books. So when you go to synagogue, you have two books that you typically use. You have what's called a siddur, and that's basically it's kind of like an order of worship. It has all the prayers. It has all the different systems that you go through, the chants, things like that. And then you have the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, the first books of Moses. It is the Hebrew scriptures. That's what they use. That is the Torah. So I had those 2 books, and the interesting things about those books is when you open a book in English, this is the cover, okay? And you read left to right. Great. With the Siddur and the Torah, because it's written in Hebrew, you open the book, but this is the cover, and you read right to left. Interesting. Small change. We can easily adjust to that. Not a problem. In the Siddur, it is written in Hebrew, which I don't know how to read, and English, and there's also a transliteration. So the English words or sounds that would make up the Hebrew words. Okay, so that way, regardless of where you are, you can still follow along and know what they're talking about. So truthfully, the first day that I was there, I don't know how to read Hebrew. I still don't know how to read Hebrew, to be perfectly honest. And I didn't know a lot of their chants, but I would read what they were saying or chanting in English, so that I was still fully participating. Now, a lot of the chants they do are rather catchy, and you can catch on pretty quickly. So I highly enjoyed that. There is no organ, no choir, typically in the synagogue, at least the synagogue that I was a part of. Some synagogues have them, but the synagogue that I'm a part of does not. And that was a bit jarring to me. In the Christian tradition, I was all about the music, and that's how I felt connected, and that's where I got most of my inspiration and my messages from. But in the Jewish synagogues, we don't have that. It's really simplified or focused down on the reason you're there is to pray and to ground yourself and to read Torah and to build yourself up. It's not as much about the fluff and the appearance and the showiness of everything, but it's about the heart of why you're actually there. Okay? And then the Torah is the same way, but it's written just in English and Hebrew. And that's the Torah, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. So my first visit to the synagogue was awesome. It was overwhelming. So then after synagogue services, they invited me to a small gathering called a Kiddush. Kiddush is in a separate room. It has a blessing with a challah. It's like a braided bread and Kiddush. it's called Kiddush, I should say. There is a cup with some wine or some juice, and you do a blessing over that as well. And those are blessings, and then we do like a little luncheon type thing afterwards and just chat with people. And I found the people to be very organic and relatable and welcoming and not at all about appearances or show. They were there and just normal, just themselves. They weren't trying to be anybody else and trying to be anything special. So that was awesome. I really enjoyed getting to meet some people. I was overwhelmed. I think I remembered 2 names that first day, but I had a great time nonetheless. And then, of course, I got out of the sanctuary and Kiddush, and I immediately called my boyfriend and told him all about it and was like, oh, there's this, 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 this. And he's just listening to me chirp and chatter on about how amazing it was and how excited I was. And he asked if I was going back the next week. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to. And before I had left, it was the week before a holiday called Purim. Purim is a holiday where we celebrate Queen Esther and how she had to conceal herself to help the Hebrew people. So in Jewish culture, they wear costumes and it's very jovial and it's very bright and colorful and all these different things. So when I left, they said, okay, so next week we're celebrating Purim, so make sure that you wear a costume. And in my head, I was thinking, yeah, they're just seeing if they can fool this Christian person. Like, I'm not going to show up in a costume. I thought I was going to be the only one and it was going to be this massive joke on me. So, long story short, of course, my boyfriend is wonderful, but he encourages the fun sometimes. So he didn't necessarily correct or discourage that intuition in my head. So the next week I did not show up in a costume, and it was Purim, and it was fabulous, and everyone else was in a costume. And I felt rather silly and ridiculous that I was not being a part of it. So again, they're very gracious. They had a table full of different like hats and masks that you could throw on quick if you forgot your costume. And because I forgot my costume, I was given a hat to wear, and I was welcomed into part of the group, and they had a great time, and we played a game, and it was great. So yes, I was nervous to let go of that appearance of being perfect. And in the synagogue that I'm a part of, they drop that at the door. There's no pretense. You come as you are, as imperfect as you are, and you're accepted and welcomed and loved just as you are. And they're not afraid to be funny and jovial and just have a fun time with it. And that's awesome. So after going to synagogue for, a couple of months, I started talking to the president again. I talked to the director of learning, is what she's referred to. She teaches like the Christian version of Sunday school, but for the Jewish community. So like Hebrew school kind of thing. About what's the process if I chose to convert to Judaism. So if I wanted to learn more and I wanted to actually announce and proclaim that I am a Jewish woman, what would that be about? And of course, I've talked to my boyfriend about it, but he's also encouraged me to take the lead in this stage of my life. Like, if this is a conversion that you are seeking, then you need to take leadership of it, and you need to actually ask the questions. I'll be there to support you, but I want to make sure that you are doing this because you want to, and not that you're doing it because I'm pushing you to. Make sense? I know, he's a pretty amazing guy. I love him a lot. So he talked to me, and I've talked to the president, and I've talked to the director of learning, and their first question is, well, what movement do you think you want to be a part of? What are you seeking for your conversion? And I knew in talking to my boyfriend, the one thing I wanted with my conversion is I want it done by halacha, or by Jewish law. I want it done as they say it's supposed to be done. So I wanted to do some studying so I felt a little bit knowledgeable. I want to go before, even though I'm nervous as all get out, I want to go before a Beidin. And a Beidin is really just a bunch of people who are knowledgeable about Judaism. They're practicing, they have different levels of observances depending on where you are, and just really that they know that my intentions are true. And then after I go after I talk to the Beidin and that people, then I would go through almost like a baptism, if you want to call it that, but it's an immersion in a natural body of water called a mikvah. So I wanted to make sure I did my conversion the right way. So after talking to people about making sure that whatever conversion route I chose, I wanted it done via halacha. Then they talked to me about the different movements. Now there are many different movements in Judaism, and I live in Wisconsin. There's not that much variety around here. In Wisconsin, there's typically 3. There is the Reformed movement, who is very focused on social justice, and they're very inclusive about different things. There's the conservative branch, and they are very, very specific as far as the Torah is the Torah. The Torah is the Word of God, and how we live it should be reflective of that. And then there's the Orthodox branch. The Orthodox branch is more, from my opinion, a little more restrictive because you need to live within a certain proximity to temple, and you have different sets of rules that are more difficult to fit and accommodate in the small town where I live. So thinking about the different types of movements, all of them are great in their own regard. I'm just trying to figure out where I fit best. The synagogue that I attend in my current town is a conservative synagogue. So I decided, okay, we're gonna pursue this conversion via the conservative movement. And the next step was to find a sponsoring rabbi. So when you're going through the conversion process, you need to have a rabbi who is going to kind of assist you through it and help you learn and ask questions and things like that. And I was put in touch with one and reached out, and we scheduled a one-on-one meeting, and I was intimidated. I was scared. I was terrified. Everything that I had read had told me, like, oh, prepare, you're going to be turned down 3 times, and they want to make sure that you're really dead set on being Jewish, and this is really what you want. And I was nervous. I don't like rejection. I struggle with that sometimes. Sometimes I struggle with the idea of people not liking me or not seeing value in me, and I overthink things a lot. So my boyfriend was wonderful and gracious enough to come down and meet with the rabbi with me, and will adamantly vouch that I was shaking. when we went to go meet the rabbi, I was nervous. I didn't want to say anything wrong. I wanted to come across just right. I wanted to make sure that he accepted me. I was nervous he was going to say no. And he was a very knowledgeable man and very warm and willing to talk to me and hear my story and how I got to there. And he was great. And by the end of it, he said, oh yes, of course, I'll be your sponsoring rabbi, and we have to get you started in what's called a conversion course. Or they sometimes call it a Judaism 101, basically where you learn some things about Judaism. So he gave me some books and sent me home and said, okay, I'll be in contact about the start date for that. And I left and I had the biggest sigh ever, because that was a big a big first step for me. And my boyfriend and I went home and we laughed about how ridiculously anxious I was about the whole process. And then we started to prepare for the next holiday that was coming up, which was Passover or Pesach. And I got my first opportunity to go to a Seder, and I'm going to tell you all about that experience in the next video. That next video would be called, "You Want Me to Eat What?" Oh, it was quite the fun time, I tell you. You'll hear more about it next time. Until then, take care.